We're going to be discussing how to install Oz clips onto a painting and then how to then install the painting into a travel frame. Travel frames are made in the crate shop. They're most often used for unframed paintings, but sometimes they get used for frame paintings as well. Oz clips are made in Australia. They are a hinged brass construction. For our purposes, we're just going to install one to show you how it's done, and then we'll transfer over to one that's already had them installed. The first thing that we do is we measure from the exterior of the painting. It kind of depends on the scale of the painting, where you want it to be. For this one, I'll just do it at roughly 5 inches.
This is often a two-person job. This being a small model here, we have the luxury of putting it on a tabletop. Sometimes it'll be, on blocks on the ground or on a stabilized A-frame. So one person can install the Oz clip and the other person holds.
Sometimes we'll lean the painting against the wall if we have some protection on the wall so the painting doesn't get harmed in any way. All I'm doing here is I'm marking the holes on the Oz clip on the back of the artwork, and then I'm going to drill those holes out. A trick to make sure that you don't go too deep into the artwork is having a piece of tape that you wrap around that shows the depth that you're going to be drilling to. These are just flathead wood screws.
If you're the person holding the work, you have to provide resistance as they install the screw. They need to force the screw into the back of the piece.
So that's an installed Oz clip. They're hinged so that they can be mounted on both sides of the painting in the back. They should be mounted opposite each other. If this one is mounted with the L at the bottom, you want the second one, the lower one, to be mounted with the L at the top. This just provides a locking mechanism so that the painting can't shift around.
And they don't need to take the hardware off if it's in a show. Because of the hinge, it disappears. And we'll show you a completed one. Here we have our completed Oz clip installation. The next step will be placing the work inside of the T-frame. It'll be connected here through this hole. So what you want to do is place it into the T-frame and center it.
Most of our standard T-frames have 3 inches of allowance on either side of the artwork. We would measure 3 inches from the top, bottom, and each side with relation to the artwork. So that's 3. The next step is marking the holes for the Oz clips. Make sure they're open all the way. Then you just take a pencil and simply mark out where that hole is going to be. You do it for all 4. We're just going to install one of the hardware sets, and then we'll show you a completed one. The next step is drilling. This is going to make a mess, so it's a good idea to take a tack cloth or take a vacuum. If you give the drill a little tap into the wood, it makes it so it doesn't skate around when you start drilling, so that your holes align where you drew them. We're just pushing the sawdust out. The next step is installing the hardware. So we have a screw head bolt, a fender washer, and a T-nut.
So the T-nut goes inside. It has these little teeth that you can see. You want to push it in a little bit, and that'll keep the T-nut from spinning around. The bolt goes in the fender washer and up through the outside. So I've started threading it. Now you can use the drill. So here you have your T-nut and your bolt coming through on the inside, and your Oz clip will lay over that. And on the outside, you have your bolt, and then your fender washer will keep the bolt from pulling through into the wood. Once this bolt is in, that's it. You'll never take it out.
So we would do that for all 4 bolts in this example. Sometimes there are more than 4 Oz clips on a painting. If it's a really heavy painting, then you'll space out multiple Oz clips. And it'll just be doing the exact same step, just more times.
So we have a completed T-frame.
In the instance of this, it's very small, it's very light. It would only have 4. If it was 10 times heavier and 10 times bigger, you would want to support more of it. If you feel uncomfortable with 4 Oz clips, it's a good idea to install more. It's always a good thing to communicate to the office when a change is happening. Don't just be a cowboy. So this is an example of the 4 bolts all installed. And these are safety bumpers, which we've installed in this, which sometimes we'll have them, sometimes we won't. Again, it's up to the client's discretion. This is Ethafoam lined with Volara. So the Volara doesn't have any rough edges no matter how you cut it. So it's a way to treat the surface of a piece of Ethafoam. We're gonna be installing the mounting hardware after we put the piece in. Usually this is done with 2 people. So the next set of hardware is a small washer, a lock washer, and a wing nut. The small washer goes on first, then the lock washer, and then the wing nut. And these get hand tightened to the point where it feels a little uncomfortable to tighten it further with your hands. You don't want to mechanically close it because that means that they're going to have to use a tool to take it out, and you don't want any tools near the artwork. It's much safer to have a gloved hand. That's why we don't hand tighten too much.
Yeah, simple way to remember is flat lock, which rhymes with Matlock. Flat lock butterfly. And you do this 4 times.
So this is a completed example with the plywood standing in the place of the artwork. After this, the next step is to close up the travel frame by screwing the lid back on. And that's very straightforward. Travel frames sometimes are crated. They'll go into another box. Sometimes they're just a standalone. When they're standalone, often they will request to poly wrap it. The only trick is normally there's handles on the sides of these, and then you have to cut a window for the handle out of the plastic. The general usefulness of a travel frame is it's a way of transporting a 2-dimensional artwork with nothing touching the surface or the edges. This is a way to use the stretcher bar at the back of the painting to mount and safely protect the entire surface of the painting, including the sides. It's the most popular form of shipping 2D artwork. Most of the time, framed pieces will go into wells.
Lid goes on, black corner, wafer head screws.
And we're only putting 4 screws in. Normally we would fill them all. Another advantage of using a travel frame is that they're relatively light for their size and their safety, in part because of this Coralite window. The Coralite doesn't do anything except for protect the surface of the painting. It's not a structural element. And so that's a completed travel frame.